hoist those straps on armor. They needed to know how to take care of a knight on the battlefield. Because as mentioned earlier, if a knight had gotten wounded on the battlefield, their squires would rush out to them and try to assist the knight, bring him back and protect him from getting hurt any further. They would take him out weapons.
So is the squire like off limits? Like if they were in the middle of the battle, the squire rushing out to help their knight, could another knight kill the squire?
They could. They could. There was really no laws. We'll get into a point that where there was some implementations upon that. But yeah, the squire's life could end rather quickly if they got caught at the wrong point in the battlefield. They had to keep an eye out for themselves. If a knight had carried forth in a charge of heavy cavalry, came back for another lance, it was up to his squires to hand him that, to suit him up in his armor, and so on. Then once they had trained and became the age about 20 or above, then they could actually be knighted. Such as this individual's age. How old are you? 15. So he's taller than me, so he's a 20-year-old or older. And so then you would become knighted once you reach that age approximately. Then you can participate in battle. Yes,
would you be knighted just because you could afford it, or did he have to prove something to be knighted?
Depending upon the circumstances, and we'll talk about this just in a short moment, but depending upon the circumstances, as long as you were at least 20 years old or thereabouts, you can be knighted. If before that age, there are no historical accounts that show us knights getting knighted before that age. But could a knight get knighted because he did a good deed on the battlefield as a normal soldier? Early on, yes, he could. And we'll expound on that on a little bit. But early on in the 12th, yes.
Never knights can be lie about their age, or they're like kind of person.
Could knights lie about their age? They certainly could, and they did. They're in the up to about the 13th, 14th century. There was not too many laws enforcing documentation showing that you were a true knight, showing your true age. But getting into the late 13th, mid 14th century, more and more documentation was required. So to answer that, early on, yeah, there was a lot of people lying out there. Afterwards, they still tried to lie, and sometimes they suffered the penalty if they were caught. All right, so thank you all. So first was a page, then was a squire, and then when you got old enough, about his height, then you got thank you all for your time. All right. So, what about the expenses of a knight? Does anybody here have any guess, roughly, how much it costs an individual to retain the title of knight yearly? Just any guess?
$1,000.
Higher.
$5,000.
Higher. Yes?
20 million.
Oh. Good. How much?
40,000.
Getting closer.
50,000.
Closer.
75,000.
Closer.
100,000.
Thereabouts. Yes?
10,000.
How much?
150,000.
150,000? Yeah?
130,000.
When we start getting to accounts, if we really try to take the value of what was around back then and apply it to today, we can never actually come to 100% accurate assumption of how much it costs. It just doesn't equate. It's like saying the value of a cow back then equals the value of a cow today. It just isn't always the same. But even if we take the most absurd figure and we bring that figure down a lot, we start looking right about around the range of $100,000 to $150,000 to be a knight per year. Not this.
So the currency of today, not the currency back in 1800s, 1700s?
Right, they used a different currency system.
Much older than
Over in Europe. But they didn't use the euro. It was called something different. I just totally slips my mind right now.
How did a knight earn that kind of money to be able to afford that?
Well, he had land, so his land basically got him the startup fee. Basically, to be able to get that suit of armor, to get the horse. But then once he started going to battle, then he could profit off of battle. You see, a knight would not want to kill another knight. That was the furthest thing from their mind. If I was signified as a knight, which surprisingly my armor does not make me a knight, Nothing I am wearing right now makes me a knight. It simply makes me a man-at-arms or a soldier on the battlefield. What a knight could profit from, the way he made his money was going to battle, doing warfare, and upon identifying another knight, if he could best him, if he could knock him unconscious, if he could take him hostage somehow, and the other knight yielded to that knight, he could take him prisoner. He could take him hostage. And as his hostage, he would have his squires run over, take the armor off the individual, tie him up, hold him hostage, send word back where that knight was from, and say, look, give me X amount of dollars or else I'm going to kill him. And that's how knights really made their money, was by ransoming other knights.
Is it a hand signal? You're saying that looking at you right now, no one would know that you were a knight.
Right.
Well, how would one knight identify, the ransom? I mean, it seems that
They usually had plumes by their armor. They had depictions. They would wear a surcoat that would have their colors, that would show they would have an emblem. They would have heraldry. Usually if they had a shield, they had a painted on heraldry, so it showed the family lineage that they were from. A knight also had with them in combat and tournaments a herald. And a herald was very well versed in all the different depictions of what this knight was, where he was from, how much he was really worth. So his colors, his horse, what his horse was wearing could also help identify that. You could do that, yes. Good. And so what she was saying was basically your horse, what armor they had, the armor could be painted. Yes, the armor could be painted. There are historical ways that armor was painted. And this could also help the individuals identify what that knight was or who he was from or how much he was worth. So me fighting another knight or any knight fighting another knight would not want ultimately to kill his opponent. He'd want to take ransom and profit, be able to make that money from battle, from warfare, to continue on being a knight. We're going to get into a historical account of William Marshall. Does anybody here know who William Marshall was? You do? You do? Okay, so a couple of people, so good. So we're going to go through an account, and this is literally written during the 12th century by a chronicler, a person who recorded the biography of William Marshall. Now, William Marshall, before we get into talking about him, he was a knight as you think he should be. Who here has any idea what chivalry is? What is chivalry?
It's the knight's code of conduct.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir?
Humbleness.
Huh?
Being humble.
Being humble, yes. Yes, sir?
Morals.
Morals, having good morals, that's right. All right, and all of these are very appropriate answers. And William Marshall was one knight in particular that truly held up all of these morals as we think of them today. However, as we're going to learn, chivalry was nothing more than solving a conflict with a bloody sword. Now, when William Marshall, before he was born, the King of England was King Henry in the 11th century to the early 12th century. Now, once King Henry died, the rightful heir to the throne was his daughter Matilda. Matilda was supposed to become Queen of England in the early 12th century. However, her cousin, or rather King Henry's nephew, wound up becoming king. The religion enacted him as king. Stephen became King of England. And Matilda was very unhappy about this. And so what she did is she grouped together a bunch of her knights, a bunch of individuals. They came and they fought a civil war against King Stephen and his army. And during this conflict is about the time period that William Marshall was born. Nobody knows his exact date of birth, but there are some guesses out there. But even when William Marshall was older and people asked him how old he was when he was born, he said that he had no recollection. He had no idea when he was born. Nobody told him when he was born. So we can only guess to about the age William was. But at this point, William was very, very young.